On today's show, me and Swipa are going to talk, maybe even debate about whether the Nuggets are going to have more or less pressure on them now that they have a championship. We're going to prioritize who needs to have a good year this year versus who maybe could afford to have a down year. And then lastly, we're going to look at the top MVP candidates and decide, do these guys all have a case, or is this Jokic is locked up before we even play a game? All that and more on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody, and welcome into the Locked On Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Mares, and I'm joined by my new co-host, first time doing the two-man game, Swipa Cam. What's up, Swipa?
Man, we live in a great day, Adam. I'm very, very glad to be here. I can't wait for this discussion. You know, this is one of my favorite subjects to get into.
Of course, man, and we are only, everybody, 9 days away from Media Day. Feels a little crazy. Maybe it's 10 days, actually. Well, but by the time you're hearing this on Friday, it'll be 9 days away. It all gets real. We're basically going to have one more full week of wrapping up, putting a bow on this offseason before the storylines just, fall right in our lap. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a great time. But today I want to talk about something I've been thinking about a lot. My default position is to think that once you get a championship, when you're a player like Jokic or Jamal or Michael Malone or even Michael Porter, there's a pressure on you to get over the hump and get a title. After that, the next pressure for like your legacy, if you care about those things or whatever, it almost becomes abstract. How many can you win? Not can you win two, not can you win three. It's just how many. And that becomes, it's in my mind, a little bit of a lesser pressure. But I'm curious what you think, Swipa. Do you feel this year the Nuggets are going to play, and especially approach the season, meaning come into the beginning of the season with no pressure, less pressure, or do you think it'll be the same as years past?
You know what's interesting about that question is typically in NBA history, when you win that first one, it takes all the angst off of you because now you've already done it and you figured out how to win. And I think for the Nuggets, you know, again, you got to realize, like, and I know you know this better than anybody, Jamal Murray 26, Jokic 28, Gordon 28, and then now Porter's 25. Like, they're all very young and, you know, really they're all still ascending to some degree, which is crazy. So I think that the core, because they've won so early and they're all tied in together for the next couple of seasons, I think that this year is probably going to be the most dominant that they've been able to play, but I just think the pressure is not going to be there. I think a lot of this is that because they've done it and at the highest of levels, and they literally have executed, went 16-4 in a playoff run. Now it's like, not only do we not have pressure, but now we know for a fact that we can blitz you whenever we want. And so I actually think that there's not going to be as much pressure, but that's just because for them, everything's already been done. They've already accomplished one of the goals. Now it's just about executing that on a game-by-game basis, month by month, and then getting into the playoffs and making sure you're ready to roll.
You have to imagine they're more confident, right? You get it done, you know you can do it. Nobody can ever take that from you. So you have to imagine you have more confidence. And I would agree that I think the pressure – here's what I'll say. The Nuggets, I don't think, ever reached the point of pressure. If they didn't win last year, I think this year you start to look around and go like, okay, we're not really behind schedule, but at the same time, man, we don't have that many. You never know what could happen. You know, these things fall apart quickly. So I think that in that way they have less pressure. But here's the other thing that's true about them, and you know this very well. Nobody was paying attention to the Nuggets. Nobody. What do they have? 30 televised games this year, nationally televised games. They're coming in with a target on their back in terms of they're the number one team. So I think there's going to be less pressure initially. I think they're going to approach the season a little light and loose. It could go either way. They could be too light and they get off to a bad start and all this or that. But I think that early on, this year's going to feel different because they're a marquee team. For the first time ever, especially in this era, they're a marquee team.
Well, let me ask you this, Adam. So when you say come in a little light, so are we talking about 29th ranked defense in the NBA light? or are we saying that they're coming in light like we don't have anything else to prove, but we're just going to kind of roll into the season and get our grind and gears together?
Here's what I love about you saying this is I've done this 3 or 4 times myself this offseason where you sit there and you go, I'm just worried about that bench. And then you go, hold on, worse than last year? I'm just worried about that defense. Wait, worse than last year? Like, you're right, man. They did get off to a horrible start just like last year and they won the title. So this year, if you're worried about them coming in unfocused, Is it going to be worse than last year?
You remember Media Day last year when Michael Malone said he wanted them to be a top 5 defense, and they proceeded to be a bottom 2 defense. So I guess for you.
By the way, I knew on Media Day they were going to be a bottom 2 defense. When Yoke was asked the question and he was like, nope, it was like, all right, well. Michael Malone, too. Michael Malone, I'm sure, was like watching the presser back behind closed doors and like, damn it, okay.
So, yeah, I guess for you, with how well you know this team and this group of players, knowing Jamal and Yoke and MPJ and AG, do you feel like for them as the leaders that what tone are you expecting from them based on what you know about them, maybe coming into the year?
Well, first of all, I always want to say that, my relationship to those guys is one of where I observe them, so I don't want to pretend like I can ask Jokic that question. He's going to give me an answer, but he's not going to open up his heart to me. But nonetheless, I do get to be around them and make observations, this or that. I will say, I think Aaron Gordon, I think it was underrated how much pressure he faced against the Warriors because, again, it doesn't translate to television, but Draymond Green was trying to go at him and trying to break him mentally. And I thought he answered even in that series, I thought he did a great job, but I think Draymond sensed weakness in AG. I think AG has sort of hinted about this, by the way, throughout the year. He's dropped little things where he's talked about, hey, this was actually hard for me. I've had to work on my mental resolve or this or that. And I'm not saying it's because of Draymond. I just think maybe he recognized in himself that, hey, this is going to be a thing. To win a title, I'm going to have to perform under pressure. And I think he mastered that. I think for a player like Aaron Gordon, though, this year, he might be a guy who benefits the most from that. He won a title, and he was a huge piece of it. He probably, Draymond Green talks to him and tells him he's a loser or this or that. He's probably like, bro, come on.
So I guess with that then, too, because the first 2 games for Aaron Gordon in that Warriors series were not great. But then, Adam, I remember you talking about this. Aaron Gordon didn't have a great playoff run for Denver yet. Remember the Portland series, you could say he was, pretty good, but obviously Dame Lillard was cooking him, whatever else. And then obviously versus the Suns, he couldn't do anything with Devin Booker, couldn't do anything with CP3, Mikal Bridges. So, and then the Warriors series happened. So we were all wondering if he had it inside of him. And then obviously, the Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Jimmy Butler matchup, he just went to another level. So I guess for you, do you feel like, let me ask you this. Do you think that Aaron Gordon benefits most from the confidence boost that he got through the playoffs and now he's able to go into the year maybe another level better than what he was?
Man, this is a fun one because you sit there and go, Murray didn't lack confidence before. Like that guy, I think, is the one guy on the team that's like just doesn't get rattled. Pressure, he steps up. I think Jokic, this is weird to say, Jokic is like a 9.9 out of 10 in this. I think he's very even-keeled or whatever. But even we've seen in moments where he could get, I don't want to say rattled, but you could tell it's like, hey, this is hard. He had to lock in. There were moments in the playoffs where you're like, hey, you could tell us. I do think it gets easier for even a player like Jokic this year. But I do agree that I think for Aaron Gordon, it probably is the single player who most, I would guess, again, this is my observation. I would guess that he probably has the most like unburdened feeling from getting this title. And I don't know that necessarily he has the skill level to elevate his game to something we haven't seen other than marginally here or there. Like, slightly better shooter, slightly better, whatever, this or that. But I do think from a confidence standpoint, we're probably going to get the most confident AG ever.
What do you think his ceiling is? Like, well, I guess when you say that and as you think about his game, because I've also heard you talk about Christian Brown. Like, you said you feel like you know what kind of player he could be. Do you feel like AG's ceiling, like when I'm looking at him, I feel like the highest version of Aaron Gordon, probably like a Pascal Siakam, like a great creator, a playmaker. I mean, but again, Pascal's better than AG. So like, I guess where do you kind of see him like in terms of his ceiling getting? Do you feel like he's just going to become better at the marginal things, or he actually can be like demonstrably better in terms of maybe a DPOY candidate or a very much improved offensive player as a whole?
I mean, I think for AG, first of all, when you say Siakam's a better player, my thing with better, when you talk about that type of player, it's almost less about who's better. It's more about AG is in the right role for what he does, and now he's
right.
He's perfect at that. I think the areas he can get better, he could become a more confident shooter, especially from the corners. I think guys like AG just need to pick a spot or two. I don't think they're guys that need to work their way around the arc and be good from everywhere. Most of your shots are going to come on very specific actions in a specific moment. So I think he can become a more confident and consistent shooter. And I think defensively, I would have said in April of last year that he could become a better defender. Like, he's a really good one. Is he elite? But I think that having watched the playoffs, I think he's an elite defender who just has physically, he can't do that for too long. So to me, I really just think it's on the margins, the little stuff he does, better free throw shooting, better 3-point shooting, more impactful defender, 82 games. But I just know he'll be that for the 16 games.
Yeah, that's probably the other thing too. Is like his free throws fell absolutely off last season. So if he can get that back around 77% on the year, that's going to make him that much more effective as a player, because now obviously he's playing bully ball inside. The fact that he's shooting near 80% from the line, that's just going to put so much pressure on the defense. And again, and Adam, you remember this, he started the year off, he was shooting 40% from three. Yeah. He was doing really well, but then it tailed off. But again, if he can for real, 77% from the line, 38% from three, I feel like now we're having a different conversation about his overall effectiveness. And to your point, those are marginal things. That's just kind of shooting variant. And then on top of that, your free throw rate and execution. That right there can make him that much better of a player.
Aaron Gordon's 3-point shooting really doesn't move things much unless you talk about him becoming a 40%. I think it's guys that shoot 2 or 3 threes a game. When we talk about the difference between 33% and 35%, we're talking like 1 or 2 threes total all season. In your head, it feels like a lot, but really it's like 1 or 2 threes over the course of a season that are going to bump it up. But I'm with you. Just those little margins. And then more than anything, his confidence and stuff in the playoffs, I do think will go up a whole other level. But here's one area I didn't mention earlier. And I've done this fan fiction over at DNVR on that show. Jokic becoming more of a coach, a player coach, is one way that Aaron Gordon can have an even better year, because he's the one guy that I feel
also asks for Jokic.
Yeah, I just feel like Aaron Gordon will listen to anything Jokic tells him, and I feel like Jokic could probably pick more spots to be like, hey, let's work on this thing. Here's what we're going to do here. And AG just to me would be like, he seems like the guy that would be awesome. What else you got for me? And my fan fiction in my head, seeing these guys in Serbia for so long, I'm like, maybe that's the bond that is really developing this summer, that it's like those two are going to be even on a more of a wavelength going forward in ways that we actually start to notice as the year gets here. Yeah.
What if Aaron Gordon ends up being the single strongest lifeline between Jokic and Serbia and the United States?
Could be, man. Well, think about this. Right now, Murray Jokic 2-man game, that's the best 2-man game there is. Aaron Gordon Jokic might be number 2, but the fact that we say might, that's what I mean about Aaron Gordon taking an upgrade. We could by next year be like, oh no, it's easily Aaron Gordon Jokic number 2. Like that's a legitimate 2-man game, because they have this chemistry. I just think it's a little bit on the table, and we'll see what happens. All right, on the other side, I want to talk about what would we prioritize? Who would we prioritize to have a good season? If you could pick one person to say they're going to have a very good season, who would it be? First, I want to tell you guys about FanDuel. Football season is here. It's already kicked off. Broncos season might already be over, actually. The only way you can enjoy the Broncos at this moment, and I say this as a Broncos fan, might be through betting on FanDuel. Right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you get a bonus bet every time they win in the regular season. So you want to pick a team that's probably going to rack up a lot of regular season wins. Baltimore, maybe you want to pick Baltimore. Maybe you want to pick the Cowboys if you're the worst person on earth. Just pick any team to win the Super Bowl. You get those bonus bets for every victory. You use the bonus bets on spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. We'll be right back with more Locked On Nuggets. All right, back here, segment 2, Locked On Nuggets podcast. Adam Mares, Swipa Cam. All right, I like this question because I think it's fun. Now, if we assume everybody has the same year as last year, 10% worse or 10% better, and you're just going to kind of snake draft the entire team. So you have to give even distribution to each. 10% worse, 10% better, exact same. Who would be your first pick to have a 10% better season in 2024?
Oh, gosh. There's so many options here. I think number 1, I feel like it has to be Michael Porter Jr.
Okay.
Like, I think a 10% better version of Michael Porter Jr. basically becomes a borderline all-star. So think about this: a 10% better playmaker, 10% better passer.
Well, first of all, he averages
defender.
1 assist a game, so 10% better passer is
So
1.1
assist. But he doesn't average. I think he still averages less than 1 turnover a game too. So
all right,
it shows you how he's used. You know what I mean? So I think a positive playmaker. I'll say that. I think that if he is a better, remember that 1920 version when Jamal went down, he averaged like 23-7 and shot like
unbelievable.
50 and 80 basically. What if Porter is almost there? Like, what if he gets back to that point because his efficiency is crazy? He was already the best spot-up shooter in the NBA last year. Okay, what if he's even better? What if he's better cutter and driver? And there was at one point in the playoff where he was shooting 83% on drives in the playoffs at one point. So
when was this? Wait, what year was this? This year?
This year, yeah. This is the Timberwolves series. This was during the Timberwolves series. Because I'm a MPJ truther, so I track all this stuff, right? So what if he's able to do that at a high enough rate to where it's making an actual difference, like a 10% difference in the offense because he's that much more committed to doing those kinds of things, and all of a sudden Porter takes that massive frame and all that athleticism and talent, and then he's like, all right, booming it into a 27-2 guy. I think that fundamentally changes the Nuggets and the conversation surrounding the team and whether or not like this is the clear repeat champion.
By the way, in the chat, let us know if you're watching here live on our YouTube channel. One of the more fun ways you can watch the show and follow along because you can be interactive. Let me know who your number one pick for a 10% better season would be. I love that you're with me on MPJ Island on this because I think the right answer is Jamal Murray. I just like Yoke's. We know Yoke can't really be, knock on wood, he really can't be worse, right? Like we know what he is. Does he have it? Like 10% worse for Jokic feels impossible. He's just too good, too consistently a great player. By the playoffs next year, we're just going to have Jokic. I don't care what. It's just going to be great Yoke. If you get 10% better Murray, I do feel like 10% better Murray is a legitimate 1-2 punch, which it is in the playoffs already. But then it's like, okay, we're talking about 2 top 20 players, 2 top 15 players, whatever it is. So for me, I think the right answer is Jamal. But I kind of want to go with you and say MPJ because I think it's the more fun answer. I'm with you in that MPJ. We almost don't talk about his upside anymore because he's 25. You kind of stop talking about upside, but I still feel like it's there. That the upside of Michael Porter is still this player that is just breaks the game.
Hold on, Jason Tatum's 25. We keep been talking about his upside since he was 19 years old. So
this is the year, though. I'll bet you people stop, though. I think Jason Tatum. You're right about that. We always make the joke at DNVR. He's only 19, you guys.
Well, I think here's the thing, though. I think Porter has clear things he could be better at, and I think let me ask you this: so among the big four, does he have the most obvious things that he can improve on through like work and through developing his IQ?
Yes, but only because Jamal Murray is such a weird person to say this on. Jamal Murray has all the tools he needs. He just doesn't always deploy them or seem to have them at his disposal. But the playoffs, he always does.
Right. So, by the way, a 10% worse Joker would just be Giannis, by the way. But anyway, that's another conversation. So, all right. What about let me ask you this. Because the reason, because when you said 10%, that number threw me off. Because there's somebody I wanted to say, but I was like, what is 10% better than this player?
Come on. Right, you know what I mean. It's like a little bit better, a little bit worse.
How do you feel about Peyton Watson?
Oh, man. That one is funny because at the moment he's a 0. So this
That's
is
what
a
I'm
weird
saying.
math problem. 10% of 0 is 0. Peyton Watson's a good one because it still works. You're just saying maybe it's 10% above expectation. And expectation would be not the fan expectation, which I think is inflated. More of like whatever Christian Brown was last year. That's sort of expectation. Didn't play much until December. Didn't really play a lot until February, March. So I feel like that might be more 10% of that, 10% above that, or maybe even just at that level.
What if he is slightly better than what Christian Brown was last year?
Do you think this is real?
Let me explain this. So I mean this. I'm being genuine about this. This is not like, I think when you hear Kevin Durant and Paul George and the rest of the players talk about him, and even if you kind of look at his totality of his career the last 4 years, from high school to college to now, I don't think, like, think about it. Even his body, you don't typically get long, rangy, 6'8", 7-foot wingspan athletes unless you're getting a Jaden McDaniels, you're getting a Peyton Watson, you're getting a Herb Jones, Trey Murphy. Those players typically become high-level something. Yeah. They just have a body function that allows for them to do that. And on top of that, I think we might have talked about this before. The fact that Calvin Booth said the thing that he loved most about Peyton is his IQ. For me, I think if you put all that together, I think Peyton Watson is going to be an absolute dynamite defensive player. I think it's going to be kind of like not going to be necessarily like your on ball, like great lockdown in front of you defender, but just his help defense, his rotation, deflections in the lanes, rim protection, that kind of stuff. I think if he's able to bring just a little bit more to even what Christian Brown got last year, then you got Peyton Watson and Christian Brown and whatever. And at that point, you kind of like have a really strong 7. Like how many teams in the NBA would have a stronger 7 than that,
If you have Peyton Watson, because you're right, the thing about Peyton Watson that's so enticing is it's so hard to find a wing. There's just not that many of them. And when you have one, like I love Jaden McDaniels, but the truth is he's not that good. He just has an incredible body, right? No, I mean, he's great. What I'm saying is he's not like the most skilled player in the world, but because his measurables and everything else, it's like, all right, it's all there for him. And that's how I feel with Peyton Watson. It's hard to find 6'9", 7 foot wingspan. That's just so hard. Yeah. So if you can dribble and shoot and rotate and move and all those, play in the open court, automatically your floor is like a really, really good player. It's the same with Herb Jones. Like Herb Jones, not exactly a super skilled player, but he's got a great defense, great length, and then everything else you get a long runway for. So for me, that Peyton Watson, he's hard because, again, we don't have a baseline for what a little bit better than expectation is, because what's expectation? But you might be right that he might be the single biggest ceiling raiser for, if we're not talking about Peyton Watson as a liability, if it's just like, oh, no, he's clearly a playoff caliber player, then the Nuggets are in such great shape.
Let me ask you this, too, because this is just one of your guys. What is the 10% better version of Zeke Naji?
He's another tough one. I think the 10% better for Zeke Naji is really just first year of Zeke Naji, with all of the development physically and everything else, but a guy that shoots 40% from 3 and then just does everything else, at an adequate level. For me, I've always said Zeke, to me, the number one area he has to grow and he needs to make a huge leap this year is he needs to learn the game better. I just think he's in basketball, some people are fast thinkers, some are slow. I think he's a slow thinker, and a lot of that is reps. But I'm hopeful that this year, early on, we're not seeing Zeke in the wrong spots or not knowing what to do with the ball or traveling because he just is getting sped up. To me, that him not doing those things would be the 10%.
And I even think 10% better Zeke is less for Aaron Gordon. Aaron Gordon doesn't have to play that small ball 5, maybe in a regular season if we're not. At all, yeah. And then even in the playoffs, like what if Zeke Naji is a playable player in a playoff setting? And I'm talking about like 8-minute stretches, right?
Right.
That takes so much off of Joker, off of MPJ, and off of AG. And so if he's able to be a good rebounder, good shooter, and he's a good switch defender, then Aaron Gordon, hey, we don't need you playing 48, 42 minutes a game. You could be at 36, 38, and that way we're even managing your minutes a little bit better, and that way you're fresher with the starter. So I think he has the potential to do that. I am just, of all the players we talked about so far, I'm probably the least hopeful that would happen just because of kind of where he's been in his career.
Yeah. Zeke definitely, to me, feels I feel like I know what we're going to get out of Zeke this year. I think it's going to be good because I think Zeke is good. I think he'll be, knock on wood, more healthy than seasons past, because playing consistently actually lessens your odds of an injury. Peyton Watson is the one to me where it's not that I'm out on him. It's not that I'm down on him or low on him. It's just that I don't like to get ahead of myself with a player unless I feel really confident that I see it. Like Joker early on, I was like, I see it, man. I'm telling you, it's there. With Murray, I didn't see it, and obviously he was that guy. But I didn't want to say it just to say it on hope, and that's how I am with Peyton. I just haven't seen enough for me to say, oh, this guy's going to be what I want him to be.
Well, let me ask you this: even the stretch you saw when he played the Suns, the Rockets, and then that Utah stretch, the Warrior stretch that you saw from Peyton Watson. I mean, do you have anybody else in mind that you've seen in a Nuggets jersey that was that young, that was able to have that much of an impression defensively? You know what I mean? As a rookie, like I guess because I'm trying to figure out, like, in all the players that I've watched come through the Nuggets system, I can even say that I just haven't seen somebody with that little amount of time have that much of an impact defensively at that young of an age.
Have we seen a wing player? What's the young wing player that's come through? Bobo?
Probably a Tyler Lydon. No.
Yeah, you're right. It's Wancho. It's Tyler Lydon. So the answer
Right.
is yes. Like that's the lowest possible bar to have to clear. And that's all I'm kind of getting at here is the things with Peyton that give me pause are, one, I want to see what kind of focus and competitiveness and those types of things there are, because it's just, again, he hasn't been in position to really show me those things, but I want to see it. Is he a dog or is he kind of a finesse defensive player? I want to see that. And then, you want to see offensively what is his skill set and how does it translate? Yeah. And then defensively, is the execution? Because to me, Christian Braun is an elite execution defensive player and like a good playmaking defensive player. I think Peyton Watson is a great playmaking defensive player, but I'm not sure if he's a good execution defensive player yet. I just don't know. We're gonna have to see him.
Which one do you think is more important for the team?
There's no question to me. It's like executing the game plan. It's not when you're on a championship team, mistakes are worse than like positives. You just can't. Right. Then positives are good. You can't make mistakes, and that's the thing for me. Is I want to see. I think Malone gives him a longer runway than he gave Christian Braun, just by virtue of what the roster has, available. But by Christmas, I hope he's not a guy that we're constantly once, twice, 3 times a game noticing like that's his rotation. He messed it up, or his guy just got an offensive rebound because he stopped playing. Those are the types of things that rookies typically do kind of frequently. Right. All right, let's take a break. On the other side, it's never too early to talk MVP. We're going to talk about the MVP candidates this year and why they will or won't stay in the top upper echelon of the MVP race all year long. All righty, final segment here. Locked On Nuggets podcast, little Friday edition at Mares and Swipa Cam. Guys, I hope you're enjoying this new lineup with Matt, myself, and Swipa. Different combinations every single night. We got you covered. And unlike last year or previous seasons, you're going to have an episode every single day. Nuggets 5 times a week. I think you're going to all enjoy that. All right, Swipa, you looked up on FanDuel the order of MVP candidates from top to bottom. Who is the number one, according to FanDuel, the number one MVP candidate?
Number one is Nikola Jokic with plus 430 odds at number one.
It sucks because plus 430 is just good enough that I feel like the MVP should be a long shot. I think my first tip Jokic MVP was like 30-1. I think I got odds at that 4-1. It's good, man.
Yeah,
it's good odds.
Rookie hit the second year after he won his first. He went into the season a plus 2,200 coming into the year, which was the wildest thing of all time. Yeah, it was insane, and everybody cashed out that year. So then number 2 is Giannis Antetokounmpo, a plus 5.
All right, well, stay there. Let's stay with Giannis real quick. Do you think he has the second best chance or a top 2 chance of finishing an MVP? Do you see a world in which he's just actually not an MVP candidate this year?
No, but the thing is, Adam, I don't know if you've noticed, his games played has decreased each of the last 3 seasons.
What do you mean?
He played 63 games last year, I believe.
Oh,
so
okay.
Embiid played more games than he did last season. Every year, Giannis has been dealing with injuries more frequently, and now he's dealing with a knee injury coming into the season and coming into training camp. So I think, yes, he will be because he's Giannis, and no one gets – never mind. Giannis will absolutely have an opportunity to win because I think Giannis is consensus top 2 player in the league for most people. I think the Bucks are going to have a really good regular season record. They're probably going to have the number 1 record, if not in the NBA, in the East to start the year off. And so I just think everything kind of builds itself to Giannis having another 30-10-5 season. I think this would be his 5th straight 30-10-5 season that he'll have. And he's going to be a DPOY candidate. Like all that stuff put together, I think he's probably going to be a clear number 2. I just don't know if he actually has the second best odds.
Yeah. He's going to be there because of the things you said. Milwaukee, I just would be surprised if Milwaukee's not a top team. They have a lot of talent. They're going to be a top team, and that's one of the prerequisites, or at least, one of the main things that puts you in that category. And I do think his numbers, I don't think he scores 30 a game this year. He has for the last 2 seasons, and he did 4 seasons ago. He was at 29.5. I wouldn't be surprised if he was at 27, 28 this year, just by virtue of do they need it from him? And he's done it the last few years.
Well, he's the best transition player in the league. He's led the NBA in transition, I think, each of the last 4 years. So, is that going to change, do you expect?
I mean, part of this, I think, last year was just them being shorthanded. I mean, this is the same thing with Jokic. The same rationale we apply to Jokic, I'm applying to Giannis.
Yeah.
I think you have to try to score 30. I don't think you just play the game and score 30. You have to try. It's the same with Jokic. What was his highest scoring season of his career?
7.1.
Yeah, and when was it? No Murray, right? No
Right.
Porter. He had to do it. So I just think with Giannis this year, he's not going to have to. I don't think he's going to come down like Jokic. It's 24 range, but I think he'll be at like 28. But nonetheless, you're right. I think he deserves to be in there. I definitely think he is. Do you think he's the number one competition for Jokic?
Man, that's tough.
Don't say who if you have another one. So you think it's like 50?
No, I don't think it's going to be him.
Okay. All right. Let's keep going down the list then. We'll find out who it is that Swipa thinks.
So number 3 is Luka Doncic. He's a plus 650. So this is the first year in the last 4 years, Adam. He's not been the prohibitive favorite coming into the year.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
He's the last 3 years, he was a prohibitive favorite coming into the season.
Okay. 32 points last year, 8.5 rebounds, 8 assists. Do you feel like he is he your top candidate to contend?
If he's a top 4 seed, yes. If he's a top 4 seed, the numbers are going to be there. And so I think yes, because now it's going to say they're going to, even though he has Kyrie, they're going to be like, we're carrying this roster that's not great. They got a couple rookies on the roster, Josh Green, Grant Williams, Maxi Kleba, all this other stuff. And Luka's healthy. He's reinvigorated this year. Doesn't have the off-court drama. Looks thin. Came off a passionate run.
Personal life turmoil last year that, what people might not know. So maybe that's gone.
Well, he played 66 games because of injury and because of the stuff you're talking about. So if all that stuff is done, Luka also realizes that you missed a playoff last year, dude. You don't want to do that again. So I do think Luka is going to be inspired this year. And you know what? You might get another 60-20-10 game out of Luka.
Right, yeah. He does his numbers. Here's what the case for Luka. His numbers are going to be great just because even in his worst year, they were great numbers. He's going to have great numbers. And I think that his one-off game number, there's like what you average, and then you turn on SportsCenter and you're like, Luka had what? And it's 60, 12, and 12 or something like that, like you're saying. I think Luka will beat Jokic in those. I don't know about raw numbers, but I just think he'll have more 45-point triple-double. Oh my gosh, 20 assists. Like he'll have more of those games, right, and those stick in people's minds. The thing I wonder is, unlike Jokic, and I think fairly so, I don't think Luka can win it as a 5 or 6 seed. And whether it's fair or not, I don't think he can do it because they missed the playoffs last year.
Well, and on top of that too, again, for context, as you're obviously astutely aware of this, the year Jokic did it, the Sixers won 51 games and he was number 2. And then Giannis, they fell from the 1st seed to the 3rd seed, or that was that was year before. So I'm saying there were,
but it wasn't a huge gap. Yeah, you were saying that argument was always like, come on, 2 wins.
Right. If Embiid had won 54 and Jokic had won 48, then I think that would have changed things. Right. That's just whatever. So I think for Luka, you're right. I think if Jokic is the 1 seed, let me just be very clear. If Jokic is the 1 seed, I'm willing to bet. I'm Adam. I'm telling you this right now, and you can stake our friendship on this. If he's the 1 seed and he's averaging 25, 12, and 10 again, or 26, 12, and 10, I want you to take a loan out on DNVR. I want you to take it, and I want you to place a bet. Just all of the entire ownership rights you have and bet on it, because he is not losing it the 2nd year in a row.
Yeah. I mean, I'm curious, man. These things all feel true before a season goes, but a season is so long. There's so many narrative twists and turns.
But Adam, remember you said the Jokic
look at how he woke. By the way, look how I woke him up. He's getting heated with it right now.
But you, of all people, said last year. You said 2 years ago there's no way he was going to win it, which could, again, based on basketball stuff. But last year, the 3 in a row, you said this is impossible. It's not happening. And I was
right about that one.
We were this close. So I think for you, it's like, Adam, if you just put all the narrative stuff together, and I actually think this, let me ask you this. Who do you think has the most to benefit from the NBA narrative this year among the field?
Ooh, what a take, Swipa. What a take. Hold on a second. Are you saying what I think you're saying, which is the NBA is better if Jokic wins an MVP because it helps solidify the fact that we have a new face. It's like, no, man, we're in the Jokic era. That's easier to sell.
Yeah, and on top of that, the NBA watched as it sat on his hands while he was clearly being discombobulated in the open media circuit, and it was just this free-for-all against Jokic, and then all of a sudden, oh, by the way, Jokic then beats Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Jimmy Butler on the way to a title, averaging 30, 13, and 10. I think what we're going to have this year is, even Bill Simmons. Remember, like he said last year, well, it looks better if history said Giannis has 2, Jokic has 2, Embiid has 1. Yep. He said, I'm probably going to regret this the rest of my life. And then he did immediately.
And then he did, by the playoffs, by second round, he was like, I regret this. What am I doing? You're right. He does have a good case for it. He does have a really, I think, here, let me ask you this one on Yoke. Do you think, last year, I think he didn't want it because he wanted the team accolades and this or that. And I think largely he doesn't care about individual awards. But he was willing to not be known as the baddest dude in the league last year by not playing all that hard or that well down the stretch. But this year, forget the MVP because I don't think he actually cares about the MVP. But I do wonder if this year he wants to carry himself like the baddest dude in the league, meaning he doesn't want to let guys off the hook in March. He wants to send messages throughout the year that, hey, I'm actually better than you. And when we get to the playoffs, remember this night in November that I did whatever I wanted.
I think matchups, I think he cares about that stuff. I think in maybe season-long view, like I think maybe versus Anthony Davis or the Clippers, because he always plays well versus the Clippers, or maybe versus Memphis or versus the Bucks. He always plays well versus the Bucks. Again, if you look at the numbers, he's averaging a 30-point triple-double versus Giannis the last 3 matchups. Oh, maybe just a mistake. Who knows? The 76ers, well, that's the question is, will he take that matchup personally? Because he never does. He just truly, I don't think, cares about that matchup because I think for him, it's like, it's just another game. So I think there will be some matchups he'll want to imprint his will. But I can't say that in March, right before the playoff, that Joker's going to be like, let me let everybody know about what's about to catch on to that come playoff time, you know?
Yeah. Let me real quick before I want to finish up with a couple more names here, but little buzz here. I would not be surprised if Damian Lillard trade happens in the next couple days. We got media day coming up in a week. I kind of have a feeling that we're going to see it. And I'm even getting some text here about some movement here. Phoenix may be involved tangentially, by the way. Something
oh, well,
just like a facilitator or something, this or that. So just something to kind of keep an eye on. All right, let's keep going down the list. Is there another player on here worth talking about?
So the last 3, the ones that all last 3, it's Jason Tatum plus 800 odds.
Okay.
Joel Embiid.
Their team will be good.
They will be. Joel Embiid plus 850. And then you got Shai Gilgeous with the plus 1,600. Those are your top.
All right, here's my first question for you. Do you think Drew Hanlon will be as vocal caping for his guys this year? Or do you think he was embarrassed from last year and he's like, oh, you know what, I'll sit this one out?
No, of course he will. And he's going to find – I think he'll be quieter on Joker.
Yeah,
I think he's going to be
better be.
Loud for Embiid.
What could he possibly say about Joker? Imagine give me a Drew Hanlon tweet about Jokic. How does it go over if he throws one out this year about how he's not
Jokic is averaging 15, 15, and 15, and yet the media is acting like he's doing something that's never been done before, or something like that. It's going to be something they're giving him credit for last year when Embiid is averaging 35 and 12 or whatever.
Right. Tatum, I think, has a really good chance just because I think the Celtics are, I don't want to say a lock, but they're as close to a lock as any team in the NBA to be a top 3 seed, to get that qualifier. Just the East is weak. There's not that many good teams. They're deep. Yeah. So I think that box was already checked, and he is spectacular. He has spectacular moments and this or that. So I think he's legitimately going to be in there. And while I think that Jokic losing last year sort of opens up for him to be a front runner as he should be for it, I do think there's just a natural desire to give it to the next guy, just in all of sports. And so he might get a bump from that. But I could see him winning it, but I don't think he's the main contender personally.
What do you think Shai Gilgeous has to do to win it?
Have a better record than his team is likely to have. I mean, right now, if I told you the Thunder had a good season, like, hey, man, they were a little bit better than I expected, or they were better than I expected, how many wins is that?
51. I think 51 feels comfortable. That's
a lot of wins. They won 40
like
last year. Teams,
that's what I'm saying.
Teams that win 11 more games than the previous season, it's actually super rare. Usually it's only like LeBron went to Miami or something of that nature. But just regular team development, 11 wins is super rare.
Well, that's what, remember, Phoenix did that when Chris Paul got there, and Chris Paul got 4th in MVP voting the next year.
But they didn't get Chris Paul. They got
Chet. Know. Well, that's a big piece, yeah. And then they also got Carson at Carson Edwards.
Kaysen, what is Kaysen? What is he?
Yeah, so they got him. Yeah, I mean, they just have a really good team. So, I think that's what you have to do.
I don't see them winning enough games for him to be in it, and I don't see him getting it as a 6 seed. What do
you think Embiid has to do to win it?
Man, that's a really good question. I think it would be really hard for Embiid. I think Embiid, if he was concerned about individual accolades, should go for Defensive Player of the Year. And to do that, he would have to punt on a lot of offensive production. He's not going to be a 33-point per game scorer and Defensive Player of the Year. I think if he wants to be that, he could probably be it. Go for that one. And that's the best individual award he has a chance at. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, they would have to have won like 10 more games than the field, I feel like, for him to get that award. I just don't know if I think I've never seen a narrative more set against a player who won an MVP than I think what I'm seeing from Embiid right now.
Yeah. I think Embiid's in for a weird year. They need to get off to a hot start, and he needs to get off to a hot start, because if not, I do think that he is going to face some really, really weird pressure.
But is James Harden even going to be there? Like, how are they going to accumulate these wins?
He doesn't have the excuse anymore. I mean, he's 29. Not that much time.
Yeah.
Like, or is he 30? He might be 30 actually.
No, he'll be 30 in March or something like that.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I was just saying he's not young, man. He's not a spring chicken. He's got to start doing some stuff here if he wants to win. That's it. So who was your number 2? Who did you think was the number 2 candidate?
I think Luka.
I think that's an interesting one. I'm curious to see if Dallas is that good in the regular season. They're just so volatile, but they might be.
Yeah.
And if so, his numbers, he does have that thing where he's going to have some crazy, crazy games, and I think that helps you a lot. All right, yeah. Swipa, congrats on your first week at Locked On.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's been really fun. Yeah, definitely excited for the season. Excited for all the content we're going to make this year.
Everybody else, do us a favor, hit that like button on the way out. If you haven't, open up your phone right now, go to Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star rating and review. We really appreciate it. It helps the show get discovered. It helps people know what the show's all about. So say something nice about me. Maybe say something nice about Swipa. And if you have to, say something nice about Matt Moore. Everybody else, enjoy the rest of your weekend. We'll see you guys next week on Locked On Nuggets.